What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Real Talks with Jacob, where I interview doers, achievers, and go-getters and how they created their own luck and became successful. And today we are here with Steve Lover from Michigan. Steve is a founder of Blue Mountain Business Coaching, where he helps small business owners make simple changes to greatly impact sales and marketing, profitability, productivity, and efficiency. To be more specific, he helps business owners with up to 100 employees and less than 100 million of revenue. He enjoys working with clients who want to play big and they want to win and are courageous. They have a high integrity vision and are coachable. And their business is not just a source of money, but a service to a community. So if you're a small business owner or even a solopreneur, keep listening because Steve will share some golden nuggets with you and you can apply them almost immediately to grow your business. So welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks a lot, Jacob. It's nice to be here.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. We've been planning it for quite some time, and I want to hear a little bit more about you. What is your story? What is your background? How did you come up with the great last name?
Well, the great last name I don't get to take credit for. I got that from my father, who got it from his. And I actually did a little checking to try to find out where it came from. And there's only two things I could come up with: is the area in Europe where they came from. Lieber was a very popular name, and if you take Lieber, which is German, and translate it into English, it comes lover.
Okay.
The other possibility is it came from a city called Legov, which was in right Russia, and people used to be called by their places where they came from. So Legover would drop the G, and all of a sudden you're into lover. There's only two possibilities I have, but I'm open to other options.
Usually we start like when you start working on something, but we started even before you were born.
Well, I was born at an early age.
So tell me about that. Tell me about your story. Who is Steve Lover?
So it's kind of interesting. I got married at about 22, and I was a rabbinical student. And I lived in Israel and then in Jerusalem. And then I moved to Amsterdam, Holland, where I was part of a fellowship program, and I had a small synagogue. That journey continued on and took me to both Minnesota and then afterwards California. And at one point I had to go from nonprofit to profit. So I moved back to Detroit, which is where my roots were, a suburb. And I started my first business, which I was very excited about it, and I had a lot of great energy, but I didn't have a lot of capital, and I went into a business that was capital intensive. And a couple of years later, I ended up flat on my face, dusting off and starting over again.
Can you tell me about this business, which was capital intensive?
It was a advertising guide, one of these coupon publishers.
Okay, so something like is Groupon right now?
Yeah, but this was way before the web.
Yes, so it was offline people.
It's called Penny Saver. A little booklet came out, and it was anywhere between, 16, 30, 60 pages.
Why did you choose this business to start with?
It was a franchise that came across my way. It looked interesting. Somebody brought it to my attention. I was looking for something to do. Actually, if people would come to me today in my situation I was in there and say they wanted to do that, I would tell them, no way. You have to get realistic. One of the things I learned about starting a new business is you got to be prepared for two things. It's going to take you 3 times longer than you think it'll take you, and it's going to cost 3 times as much. And if you can't weather those two things, then it's not time to start a business.
Absolutely, really, I agree. Yeah. So did you burn a lot of money there?
Yeah. Sorry?
Did you burn a lot of money with this?
Yeah. When I closed it up, I was $250,000 in debt.
So you went all in.
All in. Yeah, all in.
Wow.
All in. Yeah. And actually, it's interesting to me that there's a lot of people, this is one of the things I've noticed a lot lately, is that there are people who get into businesses not because they're ready for business or they thought about business, but either they can't find a job or they need something to do. So they think, I'll go open a business. And they really don't know what they're in for. I met with a guy a few weeks ago, and he told me he's thinking of opening a machine shop. Guy's 58 years old, and he just wants to finally do something. Mm-hmm. And I said, great. What kind of experience do you have in a machine shop? Oh, I've never been in one. I said, that's kind of a little bit of a crazy idea. That's a very expensive business to get into. I said, if you really want to do that, why don't you go get a job in a machine shop first for 2 years? Understand the workings of a machine shop and find out how it works. and then let's have that discussion. But to have that discussion now just seems to me way premature. You see it all the time, people who open restaurants who've never worked in a restaurant. And
Yeah, I
then they
mean, I
wonder,
like to cook, so I will open a restaurant.
right, 100%. And then you have a 95% failure rate and they don't know why. Well, the reason is like you have no clue what you're getting into.
Because
And
you're not cooking, you're running restaurant. People
that's
are
correct.
cooking.
Well, that's the business of something and the something E-Myth. There's a book called the E-Myth that a really great thing about
Yes.
this. And the E-Myth speaks at length about running a business is not the same as doing the job of a business. And I'll even take it a step further. Everybody thinks they're in whatever their business is, but they're really not. I don't care what business you're in, you're not in that business. You're in the marketing of that business.
Interesting.
Because if
That's
you
true.
don't market that business, you can be the best of whatever it is. You're not in the insurance business or real estate business or any other business. You're in the marketing of those things because that's the only way you create revenue. And if you can't market, you don't have a business.
Well, marketing will bring people to door. It will bring people your way, but then you need to have some different set of skills to be able to make money, which is sales. So it's not only the marketing.
No, it's true. But if you don't have enough people coming to the door, there's nowhere to go. Yes, you need sales, you need product, you need delivery, you need all the things that you need in a business. But a lot of times people spend a lot of time on the back end stuff and zero time on the front end.
Yes.
And they've never learned it. They've never gone to school, but I'm going to go become a business owner. And then they find it, and then they become prey to whoever walks in the door. So your ad reps from this paper or this is, what's it called?
Shiny object syndrome.
Yes. And I don't want to name things, the couponers or the online things, and the placemats in the restaurants, or
Yes.
the things on the carts and the ads on the carts in the store, benches. Everybody comes in, okay, so let's try it. No idea how to create it, no idea about marketing, never learned about it, and you become prey, and all of a sudden thousands of dollars, and you say, oh, marketing doesn't work. No, you're not having an approach to marketing. If you have an approach to marketing, the bottom line is like this: any business that has a good revenue flow can fix anything.
Yes.
Any business that doesn't have a good revenue flow will die before they get to the chance to fix it.
Cash flow is king. Yes.
Right. So the very first thing is, okay, how am I getting my business? I need a MVP and a minimal viable product. Once I have my minimal viable product, the best thing is to market it and test it and get it out there and get people coming in. I keep improving. I'll improve the product. I'll improve the features. I'll improve the delivery. I'll improve all of those things. But I need to be having people come in order to improve it.
Yes. We will go back to it, Steve, but I want to know about young Steve with a lot of these coupon books and 250K in debt. How did you find your way out of this situation?
So it was real simple, interesting. I was speaking to an old student of mine from when I was a rabbi in Los Angeles, and he was a very, very successful stockbroker. And he said to me, you know what? You belong in the insurance business. That's a perfect business for you.
Okay.
I got into the insurance business and I started doing pretty well. And after about 4 years in the field, New York Life Insurance Company tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if I'd like to take care of the training of their office in Southern Michigan. And so I became the trainer there. Loved the job, loved the work, and got very frustrated there because they had a great philosophy. They said, if an agent has the knowledge, the skill, and the desire, there's nothing stopping him from being super successful. He had to know what to do. He had to have the skill to actually practice and do it. And then he really had to want it. And I bought into it hook, line, and sinker. And I kept having agents come in and they'd be great at getting the knowledge, great at the skill, and they had the desire, and they were bombing out.
Why?
It's very simple, because people don't do what they want to do. They do what they do.
Can you repeat that? That's interesting.
Yes. People don't do what they want to do. They do what they do. We are creatures of habit, and we'll do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And so there was no part of the system that had help people get out of their way. I have this great line I like to use. I don't even remember where I picked it up, but the biggest thing standing between you and success is you,
Okay. Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
And so what happened is people couldn't get out of the way. And I would see people coming into the insurance business and they really wanted to be successful and they couldn't get their gumption up to go make the calls they had to do or do the connections. And the industry usually says, it's because they don't really want it. They're lazy. And it's not true. It's not true at all. There's something in the way. And when you start dealing with that something, you find out the way that makes it work.
So it's a lot about not learning. It's more about unlearning these old habits, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about seeing where your future really is. And it's about your picture of yourself and how you understand. We all have frameworks, and frameworks are beliefs that are not good or bad or right or wrong. They serve you and they don't serve you. Let me give you an example. Little kid's playing in front of his house and his mother's on the porch watching him. Kid's 6 years old. She goes inside to get herself a glass of iced tea. And she calls Junior over and she says, listen, while I'm in the house, don't talk to any strangers. And the kid says, why not? He says, strangers can be very dangerous. Don't talk to strangers. And the kid says, okay. Well, this kid grows up, 24 years old. He comes to New York Life and gets a job as a insurance agent. And he comes into my class and we say, okay, go out and see 10 people a week. Now, in the back of his head is his mother's voice, don't talk to strangers. It could be dangerous. He's not going to talk to strangers. He's not going to go out and meet people easily. He's got a belief system that's getting in his way. Now, it's not right or wrong. Actually, it serves you or it doesn't. And I don't know if I would tell my kid strangers could be dangerous, though it's true. You have to know. But it serves a 6-year-old playing by himself in the street. It serves him very well. It's completely not serving the 24-year-old. So if you don't do something to deal with what's getting in his way, he's not going to pull the trigger. I don't care how much knowledge, skill, and desire he has. He's not going to pull the trigger and do what he has to do because he's got to first address that underlying belief that's such a problem.
And that I think is what is really difficult, because you cannot find it yourself, right? By questioning, you might be asking, okay, maybe my sales script isn't good, or these very technical questions, but you really cannot understand without somebody's help usually what is your subconscious telling you. What is that belief system that your young 6-year-old brain absorbed, and then then maybe forgot about it, but your 24-year-old self still live up to it.
Right. Well, so the truth is there are ways to do it by yourself, but it's much harder. It's much easier to do it with help.
Is it about asking why a lot?
It's not so much why. First off, it's about getting really quiet. When you get really quiet and then you start asking the question, where does that come from? It's about being aware of your reactions and your responses to people. So somebody says something and you get insulted. You have to step back for a minute and say, where did that come from? There has to be a certain amount of what I like to call judgment-free awareness. And judgment-free awareness is something that really works a lot on the outside, but it works on the inside also. I don't want to judge myself. I just want to see what I'm thinking and see if it still works. Because there are things that I believed as a young person that were very, very good for me as a young person that I need to completely be away from now. As a matter of fact, there's a famous book by Marshall Goldsmith called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And although I think that's true, I don't think it's totally true. I think that the title of the book is really missing. It's really what got you here will get in the way of getting you there.
Interesting.
Because it's not what the skills that got me here and made me very successful here. But to get to the next level, I need to get rid of those. I need a whole new set of skills. And my example I use for that is a guy who owns a small little family grocery store, and he's taking care of everything. He's running around. He's very, very flexible, which helps his business. But then he becomes successful. And he opens 3 other branches, and he wants to now run his grocery stores the same way all 4 of them that he ran one of them. By definition, it won't work.
He cannot close.
He can't. He's got to put in managers. He's got to put in systems. He's got to put in practices that the whole company is working with. And if he tries to do it the way he was doing the first store that made him successful in the first place, it'll completely mess him up. And so it's about dropping those skills and moving into new skills.
So you were teaching these insurance agents how to be more successful, how to sell more. How did you help them overcome this issue we are talking about?
So,
This 6 year old belief in our brains.
so this was a very big problem because I wanted to do more with the company. The company had kind of very rigid, strict set of the ways they want to do things. So what I did is I left the training position and went back into the field.
Hmm.
And if you know anything about the financial services industry in America, in order to do anything outside of the financial services industry, you need an okay from your company. It's called outside business activity. And from a
Okay.
client's person, because they're afraid I'm going to come as a New York Life agent and I'm going to be busy with hotels and I'm going to, get in some financial deal with you, and then it's going to go sour and they're going to come and blame New York Life. So
Hmm.
because of that, and it's actually a law in the SEC code and the Securities and Exchange Commission that they have to regulate that. So I told them I wanted to open a coaching practice along with my insurance practice, and they said no, I couldn't do that.
Hmm.
So I said bye. And then what happened is I started working with wholesalers because wholesalers were calling on me and said, could you sell our product? Could you sell our product? And I asked a couple of them about, what they were doing. And one of them said, hey, I think I'd really like to work with you. And he started having some huge gains. And another guy came, and before I knew it, I had 7 of them. And just to give you an idea, one of them went from 50 million in sales to 100 million in sales in 1 year.
Wow.
One of them went from, in his section of the country, he was 43 out of 50. And he went
Hmm.
from 43 to number 2.
Okay.
Another guy had never gotten all of his bonuses at the end of the year in December, and he maxed them all out in September. So I was seeing this great, really impressive difference. And it's a mix of things, a mix of how do you do business, how you look at your business. So there's for sure some strategy, there's some marketing ideas, some ways to understand the relationship. And there was some inner dive that we had to go and find out where it was. And it'd be interesting. It's interesting how people come from really successful families where the father's a governor or very prominent somewhere. And the kids think back to their days when they had to go around with their father and they cringe about having to be around these high-end people.
Hmm.
They might make a mistake or something. And now here they are in the insurance business, and they don't want to speak to high producers because they're too above them. They get back to that 17-year-old.
Wow.
And we
How do,
have the discussion, by the way, you pull them out of it. It's really interesting. And then all of a sudden, like, wow.
how do you identify all these things? Because it's not typical sales training. It's really more about these beliefs and more in-depth knowledge of yourself.
Right. So the two things go together. Anybody who thinks I'm going to just do and sit and do this, but if you don't have that inner game right, to get the outer game really popping doesn't happen.
Hmm.
I'll just tell you a very interesting story I had. I had a client, and it was probably within the first, actually, 2 really interesting stories. One was a client, first month we're talking, and this guy's got very powerful women all around him. And
Powerful in which way?
they're just strong-minded, very strong women. His assistant used to tell him what to do, and
Okay.
uh, you know, and so on and so forth. So he once said, "Well, I'm not a good idea guy. I'm a great implementer." And I said, "Well, you're the CEO of the company. Where'd that come from?" And I did a couple exercises that I do, and he got real quiet and closed his eyes and thought for a few minutes. I asked him some questions, and he said, "Oh my." And what happened was his parents got divorced when he was a young boy.
Hmm.
He was 9 or 10 years old. And every time his father would pick him up, his bigger sister would get in the car. And the first thing she'd do is start ragging on him
Wow.
and saying he did this and he did this. And the father would blow up and get angry and give him a hard time. So basically, he adopted a persona of big sister's wimpy little brother.
Mm-hmm.
Those were his words that we came up with after speaking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And after, again, teasing it out a little bit, that wasn't really who he was anymore. Well, he came into work the next day and changed some things. The girl who was his assistant was like startled. She left 2 months later.
What did he change?
He just changed the way he thought and the way he looked at himself and the way he looked at his business and his positioning. I
Okay.
got a call from his wife a week later. She said, "I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. It's a different man than the one I married."
in a good way or in a bad way?
In a good way. Very good. Very, very good. I had another story of a guy the first time I met him. This guy's a 30-year-old guy. He said he grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. He was always poor. His family were welfare family back in the day when welfare family was a very big embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
His father was bipolar, used to beat his mother with a phone back when a phone had weight to it. And he was just, this kid had never owned his own set of new clothing. His
Yes.
whole life was Salvation Army.
Wow.
And I happened to meet him and like him. He didn't have money to work with me. I gave him some ridiculous, I don't believe in taking any clients for free, because if they don't pay something, they're not into it. So I don't care if it's minimal, but it's got to be something. I mean, I have my price. My regular prices for clients is actually pretty high. But in other words, is one-on-one, if I get somebody that's in a situation like this. So this guy I happened to really like. And we sat down and he kept saying, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I don't have a degree. I'm this, I'm this. I'm not good enough. And I said, where is this coming from? And again, we went through the same process. And it was really interesting. This guy, he starts crying in the middle of the process. And he remembers when he was in second grade, he lived in a very remote part of Michigan. And the area in the school district did a contest, what a tree means to me. And he says, I don't know why I got excited about it, but I got really excited. I made this really cool poster. And I spent a lot of time. And in the end, he won. #1 guy of the whole huge area. And when the teacher brought his award in, she said, this must not have been a very important project, because the winner was Michael. And she tossed the certificate on his desk.
Oh my God.
So here's a kid who's been dealt a really tough life, and he finally excels at something. Instead of this person of authority, this teacher, giving him a little bit of boost and helping him see that he does have value, she completely knocks him into the ground farther. And says the contest was important because Michael won, and tossed it and continued going. So this kid just said, even when I win, I lose. So we worked it through and worked it through. It's actually interesting. I asked him, has he ever been a suit and tie? And I said, no. I said, do you have one? He said, no, but I can get one. So he said, great. And I wanted to meet him at a place called the Skyline Club, which is a club here in town. Very high-end suit, business place. And he comes in with a suit and tie on. And I said, you look great. What did you think when you looked in the mirror? He said, I couldn't bring myself to look in the mirror. Just imagine. 3 months later, this guy had a job as the head of a marketing department at $100,000 a year.
Wow.
He had never made over $30,000.
Uh-huh.
Now, the truth is, I don't deal a lot today. The business I do is not a lot in this. This is actually very enjoyable business, but this is a side of what I do. What I'm really doing is looking at companies and saying, how are your systems broken? How come your marketing's not working? What's going on with your sales department? But it's with this mindset that, look, it's not what's going on out there. When you speak to a business owner and you speak to anybody in his business, you're seeing a mirror of the owner. I like to say, everybody has had this situation where they've gone into a doctor's office and the people are wonderful and they're caring and they're warm. You love going to that doctor. And you've gone to other offices where the people are just like, they got nasty attitudes. They're not pleasant people. It all goes back to the doctor. The doctor has let them know, in either overtly or covertly, how he treats his customers, his patients. And if you got lousy people that are not friendly and not doing the right thing, that's because the reflection of the doctor is coming out.
I would like to expand on that story of the poor guy who landed the job as a marketing director. I think a lot of people, even high achievers in high positions, they have a problem when it comes to success. They are feeling like a fraud, that they're not worthy enough to be successful. How do you help these people? I mean, this is a tough situation to be in.
You know what's really hard about that situation is these people have to play it safe their whole life because they might be found out.
Yes.
Therefore, I can't go and do the project they want to do. I can't bring it to the next thing. I can't change things. I can't be vulnerable because maybe you can see I'm really not as good as they think I am. And so I got to play safe, 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 safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a shame because the world loses out from that. And really getting to the point where you kind of lose the concern about what other people think.
Okay.
And you try to stay true to yourself is where it's really at. And you know what? Everybody feels a little bit that fraud factor. I don't care how big you get. And what the interesting thing is from my perspective, when I go to speak to a business owner, I don't care how big he is. I know that inside there, he's got insecurities just like the rest of us. It's not just me, and it's not just you, and it's not just us little guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the big guys.
Mm-hmm.
And even just hear that language, us little guys. There's something wrong in that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's a little guy.
Yes.
You know, you have to create your own future vision of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you don't have that, that's what you're playing. You're playing this kind of small place.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is the biggest CEOs in the country have it also. Some don't. And, you know, you go and find the guys that don't, and you see they're doing really crazy things. Richard Branson. Here's a guy, he doesn't mind, what?
Elon Musk.
Yeah, they don't mind falling on their face. I mean, Elon Musk has got more failures in his life already than most people ever even think about having their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
They're too afraid to do it. You know, Richard Branson, think about all the things he's done, and he goes and he says, I'm going to try it. I don't know if it's going to work or not. We'll find out. And there's no heirs. There's no heirs. He doesn't have heirs and say, no, I know how to do well. Yeah, of course I can do that. No, he doesn't. Well, I don't know if I can do it. I'm going to find out, right? And he goes out and he does it. And that's really admirable. And what happens is when you stop being afraid, we have an old Yiddish expression. You'll stop caring what people say, what people think about you when you realize how little they do. Right?
That's really cool.
Everyone gets, concerned. What's this one going to think? What's going to think? Guess what? They're more worried about their hangnail or how much they paid in gas or who cut them off on the freeway than about you, period.
That's interesting.
Unless you are a threat to them or you're causing a problem to them, or if they think that if they don't, brown nose up to you, if they don't, try to really butter you up, they're going to be in problem. If they don't have those two things, you're not even on their radar.
So to sum it up, it's really, if you don't want to feel like a fraud, you should stop playing it safe. But in order to stop playing it safe, you need to identify who do you want to become. So you can imagine what playing big looks like. Yeah,
I mean, you can step into it. One of the problems is when you set a goal is not something you try to go to. It's something you come from.
Mm-hmm.
Which means if I have a goal, it's not something I'm achieving, I'm trying to meet, I'm trying to work. I have to first step into who that person is that makes that goal happen. And from there, I can make the goal happen. Most people, when you even say the word goal to them, they crunch up. Because it's like, as a matter of fact, for a while, I was playing a lot with the idea of play games, forget goals.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I play a game, if my season isn't a great season, but I played a good season, I can still play a good season, not having to win totally.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a goal, it's all or nothing. And all or nothing is actually a killer for people.
Yes.
But when you can become authentic and you can be okay the fact that you've screwed up and okay the fact that you make some right and you make some wrong and you're willing to learn from everybody, you're willing to do things. And at the same point, still take that position of leadership. Look, maybe it's not the right bait, but right now it's my ship and that's the way I see it and that's why I want to do it like that. When you can do that, fraud factor falls away. It's only when you can't make a mistake or you have to keep up what's the word I want? You have to keep up a vision. You have to keep up a persona that's not really there. There's a really, really, really interesting book by Carol Dweck. It's called Mindset. Mm-hmm. She speaks about, you've probably heard about this before, fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Yes. And in fixed mindset, a person has an idea where they have to be. And in growth mindset, they're always growing. So she did this really interesting experiment. And she took a great group of fifth graders and she put them in two different rooms and gave them a math test. And the one group, as a leader, she said, you did really good. You must be really smart. And the other group, you did really well. You must have tried really hard. Mm-hmm. Fixed mindset, growth mindset. Brought them back and said, I have another set of tests, but you get to choose this time. one set of tests is going to be harder, but you'll grow more from it. The other set of tests is about the same difficulty. Which one do you want? In the room where she told the kids, you did really well, you must be really smart, less than 50% took the harder one.
Wow. Okay.
In the room that she said, you did really well, you must have worked really hard, over 90% took the harder one.
That's a
And the
lot.
psychology behind it is really interesting. The people who, when you tell your kid you're really smart, basically they want to make sure they don't lose that status they have now. They'll do whatever they have to keep that status of being smart or beautiful or whatever you tell them. Whereas if you tell your kid, wow, you worked really hard, they're going to keep doing that because that's what's getting them the plus.
And the thing is that parents, if they repeat to their children that they're smart, they're beautiful, they don't, they mean it in a like good way, right?
100%. Every one of us suffer from mistakes our parents made, not willfully, but we all suffer from it.
Absolutely. Steve, a lot of people who are solopreneurs and single business owners, they're thinking about how to expand their business, to not be involved in a business in a day-to-day, so they can start working maybe more on the business rather than in the business. But now they're standing in front of like a big issue, which is for the first time they need to hire a team, they need to build the processes around that. So what would you say to a person who is ready to scale, who is already in a position that can hire some people but have no idea where to start?
That's a really juicy question. It's worth an hour or two even on itself. But here's the first thing. The first thing is resumes are suspect at best, and your gut is not a good place to know. And what ends up happening with most people when they hire, they sit down with them, they talk to them, they get a feel. I got a good feeling about this guy. I don't really care for that guy much. And they hire based on that. And unfortunately, that is or they hire an experience. Let me tell you right now, if you're hiring a bookkeeper and she's working for another company like yours right now, and you offer her more money and she comes to work with you, realize you're getting a lower quality bookkeeper. How do I know that? The other guy was willing to let her go. If she was making $45,000 at the other place and you offered her 50, she's going to go back to her boss and say, listen, I took another job, 2 weeks notice. You're going to say, why? So you can say they offered me $50,000 and I just can't turn it down. I'm sorry, I like working here. If he says, okay, go, that means she wasn't worth that much.
Interesting.
Whereas if he says, what, they offer you 50? I'll match it. I'll even raise it $2,000. Because you are that important to us. I had this happen with a client of mine. The client's got a $75 million company and somebody's working for him. He's doing a crack up job. And she came to him and said, I'm giving notice. He said, why? She said, I really love it here, but I was given an offer and I just can't refuse it. It was 12 grand more a year, whatever it was. And he said, we really want you to stay and I'm willing to match it. Can you tell me what it takes to get you to stay? Because she was a worthwhile employer. No one's going to steal her away from him because he's going to make sure that she stays. So if you're going to another place because you think you're getting their experience and you're going to pull that person away and they let him go, wrong guy. I would say there's 3 things you need to have when you look at hiring. And this, like I said, this is a much more complicated subject that has much. But number 1 is they have to have competence. They have to be able to do the job. I don't care if they know how to do it now or not. They have to be able to be taught the job. They have to have a really good work ethic. They're going to come in time and do what they have to do and spend extra time if they need to learn.
Yes. And
finally, they need a really good attitude. And if you don't have those 3 things, that is not a good employee. I don't care what business you're in, what the situation, how brilliant they are. If they have a lousy attitude, they're going to become a cancer for your organization. If they have a lousy work ethic, they're not going to get done what they need to do, and they're not going to be a great employee, and they're not going to bring, again, that cultural issue. And if they don't have the abilities, they may have a great work ethic and a great attitude, but if they don't have if you can't get the competencies, not the right kind of person, aptitude.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I know of a woman who moved here from I don't know if it was Soviet Union or if it was from Ukraine. It was one of the Eastern European countries, I think. And she moved here. She barely spoke English, and she took a job in a company as a secretary in the low end. And she worked in the company, and 20 years later, she's the CEO of the company.
Wow.
But she had unbelievable work ethic and attitude, so something needed to get done at 5 o'clock and everybody else leaving, and she sees something needs to be done. She'd go to manager and say, I have time to stay extra if you want me to stay and do this. And management noticed that. And pretty soon she moved up, and the CEO was ready to, it wasn't a publicly traded company, a private company. When the CEO was ready to leave, he made her CEO.
And I think it comes a little bit from that Eastern European mindset. Because that work ethic is quite common, like in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, very much so. You look at other places, it is. In America, it's actually a little bit, it's not what it used to be. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
But when you get people that have that, that's huge. And the other thing is, I think it's really important. And there is a cost to this, but there's a big cost to hiring bad people also. Not bad people, wrong people. And that is, there are tests out there that you can get a set of tests. I have 3 tests that I like to use. And when I was first learning about these tests and getting into them, I gave them to my kids so I could, see how to understand them and so on and so forth. And I was going through with my son and my daughter-in-law what their test said about them. And my daughter-in-law was sitting there with her mouth open. She said, this is totally unfair. I said, what do you mean by that? She said, you're not going to give anybody a chance at any job. You know too much about them before they start. You know where their strengths and weaknesses are going to be. You know how they're going to work out. You can look at it and say, you know what? It's not the right person for this job, but great for this job. Let's take a look at that. She said, not giving anybody a chance. And I said, that's one way of looking at it. I said, there's another way of looking at it is I'm not putting them in a situation that's not going to work for them and not going to work for me. And instead, I'm stacking the deck that both of us are going to be happy and have a long-term relationship.
That's beautiful. Steve.
Now, once you have, if we can just go on, I know we're coming up close near the end of the time, but one of the things interesting, excuse me, is once you have the right people, it's not the end. It's what does your culture look like? And building your culture is so important. Drucker used to have this great saying that he said, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes, I know that saying. Beautiful.
And here's the bottom line. If you have a culture of the right, the company is doing things right, and you have a service attitude as opposed to a pleasing attitude. I don't want to be pleasing people. I want to serve them, and serve them sometimes saying things that they're not going to make them happy, but they're going to trust me. I can tell you as a coach, people come into my office, I know I have something to say to them, and if I'm afraid they might not take that so well, and maybe they won't hire me because of it, I make sure I say it.
Because if you wouldn't say it, you are actually doing them a disservice, right?
You're exactly correct. And what I found is when it comes up like that and I'm uncomfortable, they become clients because I'm the first one willing to be that honest with them. And what I found is I found this little technique that's been very helpful for me. When I have to say something uncomfortable, I admit it. And I say, I have something to share with you that's uncomfortable for me to say, and it's going to be uncomfortable for you to hear. Is it okay if I share that right now?
Yes.
So when they say yes to that, they're already put themselves in accepting mode. You have a whole different discussion now.
Yeah, it's always great to ask for permission, even in sales. Like, can I tell you a little bit more about how I work? Right? Yes. It changes the dynamic and make it more acceptable for the receiver of the message.
Right. Absolutely.
So Steve, as you mentioned, unfortunately, we are sort of running out of time. I would like to continue. We can do it in the future again. We can continue on some specific topic, maybe hiring only. But I want to end always these interviews on something really actionable. And I would like to ask you, what is that one thing a small business owner can do in these times of like epidemic and the panic out there to grow or at least sustain their revenue?
There's so many things that are flooding through my mind right now. But
First one.
first, well, the first one actually is coming to my mind. It's probably not the strongest one. So let me give you both of them. The first one is become a person of action.
Mm-hmm.
Action is what makes things happen. Until you act, nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
No sale will happen till you act. No product will be developed till you act. Become a person of action and be okay that it doesn't work out. That's number one. And number two, take an experiment mindset. One of the things happens is when you get that kind of like, I'm afraid, I'm small, I'm scared, what you call. Let me experiment with it. I can try it. I'm not married to it. Let me try this. Let me try that. Let me keep trying until you find things that work.
Mm-hmm.
And get the knowledge you don't have. I mean, that's the bottom line. But if you become a person who really loves to experiment and you're willing to take action, there is nothing standing away from getting wherever you want to go.
And especially if you ask yourself a question when you are standing on a decision whether to do it or not, what is the worst thing that can happen? And
1,000%.
usually that worst thing
Nothing.
isn't that bad.
Right. 100%. I couldn't agree more, Jacob.
Steve, thank you very much for coming. Last question, where can people learn a little bit more about you? If they want to hire you as a coach, if they like you as a person, where can they can get in touch with you?
The best thing is probably to email me at steve@bluemountainbusinesscoaching.com. If I would have realized the headache that comes with that URL, I probably would have picked a different one. But
I mean, if people want to work with you, they need to put some work into it.
Yeah, very good.
So it's steve@bluemountainbusinesscoaching.com.
Correct.
Amazing. So Steve, thanks a lot for coming. It was amazing conversation.
I appreciate it very much, Jacob. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you very much. And guys, please, if we brought you some value, share this episode with your friends. Either just take a screenshot of the app you're listening this podcast on, or maybe if you're watching it on YouTube as a video, share it with your friends and let them to learn from Steve's knowledge as well. So Steve, thanks a lot again, and everybody, till next time.
Good luck.